Hey folks, Steve here with a Monitor Side Chat for May 2021. I did one of these 3 months ago, back in February, and it just served to be a good place to talk about a lot of miscellaneous things that don't really fit into many other videos. So I want to be talking about some current events going on with pre-order announcements and games being reprinted, that sort of thing. Talk about a few game-related stuff that I'm looking at right now, um, and a few other random things that really just don't fit in anywhere else, right? So it's good to have every once in a while a little bit of a chat. Now, this is the sort of thing I would maybe do as a stream, but I've not quite gotten to the point where I'm ready to do streaming. It's just something I haven't quite put the effort in on. But I encourage you, if you're watching this, to comment in the comment section down below. Happy to engage with folks and let me know what you guys are thinking as I go through all the different things I want to talk about today. Now, this is obviously a video, uh, and there will be a visual element to stuff that I'm just talking about, but it's mostly background. So if you're looking to do some, mowing of your lawn, or you're working on a car, or uh, you're just busy doing something, maybe clipping counters for prepping for a game, I think this video will work great as just audio you can leave playing in the background while you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. Should work just fine for the most part. So, uh, yeah, let's sit back and relax, guys, and talk through some stuff. Um, I've got a lot of different topics. I hope this video isn't too terribly long, but fun just to kind of talk through different things. Um, so one topic, and I almost did a dedicated video for it, but I think it just makes sense to kind of fit in here, and I won't spend a huge amount of time on it. Um, this is sort of like a meta thing when we look at like the whole concept of people having a YouTube channel and doing YouTube videos about war games, historical board games, and all of that. Um, and that, there's so many good channels out there, you can't watch them all. I know folks that like this channel don't watch every video, simply can't. And there's always more content than you can consume, so you're always trying to pick what's the right thing to consume. And what's funny is I almost get a little cynical about looking at like unboxing videos. I'm sure a lot of people do. It's like, okay, I'm going to unbox this video. I want people to take a look at the components. Um, and sometimes I get the feeling like an unboxing video only does so much. And once somebody does an unboxing video or two for a game, like how many more do you need? And I kind of felt that way. It was like the Deadly Woods came out, and like there was like 5 unboxing videos that all came out around the same time. It's like, wow, how many unboxing videos do we need? And I'm not sure that mine really added anything to the equation. Um, and it's sort of why I try to focus on games, in any capacity on the channel that haven't gotten a lot of visibility, but at the same time, you run into stuff where it's like, hey, everybody's interested in this game. There's going to be a lot of people covering it. I don't necessarily want to add to an echo, right? I want to, I want to focus on stuff that folks aren't looking at to fill the gap, I guess, right? And let people who have a little bit better production value or whatever notoriety, cover the obvious stuff. Maybe, I don't know. But things like unboxing videos are kind of easy. Um, what I've found is difficult more recently um, are review videos. And I say this mostly because I'm preparing to do my review for Korea Fire and Ice, and I don't want to spoil that review, but I'm going to mention a few things here. Um, Sometimes a review can be really easy, right? Like the mechanics of doing a review video is not too hard. I have a pretty good video editing software suite that wasn't super I mean, it was kind of expensive, but it was a one-time purchase kind of deal, and I don't have to pay monthly for it. And it comes to just really basic stuff, and I'm not an advanced user in it. But the whole idea of creating an intro graphic, doing if you've watched my review videos, I do sort of an intro. I spend a lot of time in the middle of the video showing the game and the game mechanics for those who don't have the time or inclination to watch all of my playthrough videos, which are very long and drawn out, right? I can at least give somebody the cliff notes of here's how the game works. And then I have, the real, okay, and this is what I think of the game after playing it and doing all of that towards the end of the video. And it's not hard mechanically to do all of that. Maybe it's a little more effort because I know I'm going to be on camera, so I want to make sure I don't look like a total, slob, or that I don't look like crap. I've had good sleep. I'm fresh. I can talk to the camera and look okay. All of that stuff isn't really that hard. It's not mechanically difficult. It's pretty straightforward. But the nature of doing a review, I feel, can get difficult. And what I mean by that is, like, okay, if I went and did a review of For the People, a card-driven game covering the American Civil War, I don't know how much I'm going to add to that conversation if I did one. But if the game is good and it is completely there's no question the game is excellent, then the review is probably easy, right? Now you can, it's good to call out the nitpicks, it's good to call out the things that maybe aren't good. But if you at the end of experiencing a product can say, yeah, that's a good game, that's easy. But sometimes, when you really think about a review, at least in my mind, I can't help but think okay, it can't just be a, hey, I had a lot of fun with it, 10 out of 10 kind of thing. It has to be, what do I really think? What are the shortcomings of the game? What are the good bits? Is there a good game here that has some flaws, right? And you're trying, and to me, I'm I keep thinking through I have to navigate the pros and the cons and try to reach some conclusion. And ultimately, the audience of the reviews may change, right? Or you might not know it, but what kind of a review would benefit you most really depends on who you are and how well versed you are in a topic, right? I look back at my review for the Dark Valley, and it was a very good game. I really like it a lot. I think it's a very good game, excellent game. But then, I did that review having read cover to cover a couple of Eastfront books. I have knowledge of the subject matter, not a very great knowledge, but I have some knowledge of the subject matter. But I don't have a PhD in World War II Eastfront, right? And there's always this possibility when you're reviewing a historical game that if something is ahistorical or not quite right, and you as a reviewer don't know it, somebody who does know it and finds out or understands it better or something might say, that review may have said it's a good game, but it's got all these problems, right? Maybe that's not a good review for you. You can get wrapped around the axle, right? Can you review a game not knowing that it might have some historical flaws, if you're ignorant of them, right? And I see it as with the Korean War, I am knowledgeable to a point, but there's certainly things I don't know fully. And you might have to do a huge amount of due diligence to really be absolutely quote-unquote correct. So if you do a review and say, hey, this is a good game, it has a good feel for the historical topic, but the game has historical issues, but you can't quite define them, or you're interpreting them wrong, that's entirely possible too. That someone's interpretation of the game's intent is off base. So the game maybe isn't making a claim, but you might insinuate that it is, and then say, oh, it's not historical and it's a bad game, right? So in this weird way, and I am for sure overthinking it, doing reviews can be difficult because who is your audience for that review? And if it's somebody who ultimately knows more about a topic than you, then maybe you're not the expert to be able to say on a historical basis, is this game a good game or a bad game? So for the Dark Valley in the broad strokes to me seemed fine. But if somebody's looking at the map and says, hey, this river shouldn't go to this hex row because blah 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 blah, I'm really familiar with the geography of the area and that's wrong, does that invalidate my review? Probably not. But no review is the ultimate review, I guess. So that's something I think about more now that I've done a lot of review videos or more review videos over time, now that this channel is a couple years old now, which is weird to think about. That when I do the review and I really am trying to think through, is it more than just the game, and what's the full experience of the product? What am I really providing of value in a review video? And hoping that somebody gets a good sense as to whether or not this is something for them or not. Because even you can even look at it as there are games that are good games, but it might not be for you. And I think as I get into this Korea Fire and Ice review, so much of that thought process is being tangled into my thoughts as I go to do this review. Because I could say, hey, I've had a good time with the game and it works, but you got to put some work into it. But this might not be a game for a lot of people. You know, that at least probably helps people understand, is this something they're going to spend money on? Is this something that they want to bother purchasing or maybe buying at a lower cost or something? So when you're operating in a gray area, reviewing can be hard. When a game's great and it's objectively great and the whole community thinks it's great, maybe your review is really easy, right? It doesn't, you know, if everyone says it's great and you play the game and you also think it's great, then it's all gravy. If everyone thinks a game is garbage and you think it's garbage, then maybe it's all easy. But if you're in this position where it's like, oh, you're sticking up for a game, or you're trying to find and thread the needle, find the needle hole and thread that needle, to say, here's what you really need to understand about this game. I think that can be hard for some games. Korean Fire Ice might be one of those games where to articulate the nuance of that game and how it's situated and how it should be considered, I think is more difficult than other games. And that seems like such a weird thing to say, and you might be thinking, well then, gosh, maybe the game's a bad game, but that's not my intention either, right? Anyway, there you go, guys. That's a look under the hood for someone who tries to do reviews on war games. There's so many factors, right? People break it down in a different categories. How well does a game do mechanically? How well does a game do with its components and its historicity and all of that? And for me, I try to hit the things that make sense to talk through to give people an idea of what they're dealing with. But when you're out in the wild looking at games that are a little more controversial, it's interesting to try to figure out just like, how do you feel about a game, right? I've very, very, very few games that I have had and reviewed or even thought much about that I've said, like, this is crap. I don't have very many crap games. I have games that need a lot more work put into them. I have games that are hidden in the rough a little bit, to truly understand why it's a good game takes a little bit more work than others, and that's always a tough thing to deal with, and how people look at it. I mean, I've seen some games reviewed on Board Game Geek where it's like, oh, this is a 10 out of 10 game, and for me, I'm like, no, that's a 6. That's a 6 out of 10 kind of thing, right? If you're going to put a number on it, which maybe is inadvisable. I don't know. But ultimately, everyone's opinion's a little bit different. So the best you can do maybe is interpret a review as a window into a product before you spend the money. And if somebody says it's good or bad, you're really just trying to look at the aggregate of what different people are saying, right? If there's some reviewer who I know's tastes are very similar to mine and they say that's a good game, and I juxtaposition that with somebody who has very different tastes and they say it's a bad game, then maybe that just means I'm going to pay attention to the person I'm more attuned with. But if they're both showing off the game and I'm seeing the components and all of that, that is maybe getting me what I need before I try it myself. Now I'm on the verge of rambling, so maybe I should change the subject, but I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm going to do the reviews the way I do them. I'm going to give you my opinion. You may disagree with that opinion. You may disagree with my thoughts on whether a game's a good game or a bad game. But at least you know that I'm trying to perform analysis on it, right? I'm trying to get to some conclusion based on my game experience and what I can consider for any particular product that I'm spending the time with. There's always some element maybe of Stockholm syndrome, right? You spend enough time with a game, maybe you just start to like it by default. But um, objectivity is a virtue, I guess, in this regard, and trying to do that um, is my aim, even if I don't always hit it. We'll see. Um, so, as sort of a segue out of that, the next thing I wanted to chat through was kind of where things stand with Korea Fire and Ice coming out of all my playthroughs. I had mentioned wanting to publish this in the video series covering my playthroughs, but I just want to call it out. I have put a file out on Board Game Geek for Korea Fire and Ice. I have listed as unofficial errata. This is just a little PDF calling out some issues with the 3.0 rules that are needed, that are just based on input from the designer, need to be added to uh, the rules, the living rules, whatever you want to call them, to fix some stuff that is intended but was not well documented. There really needs to be a 3.1 version of the rules. This is my swing at trying to make that clear. Um, I also have included in there some house rules that I do believe need to be made standard rules related to how objective markers work in that game. I won't go into too much detail here on that, but out of all the analysis and playthrough and evaluation of the game, this was some output from that. Totally, in parallel to any review content. This was something. If you're looking at playing this game, I would suggest you take a look at this before you get started. It should be helpful. It's not anything super major. It's just some verbiage changes, and the errata is straightforward stuff that needs to be included. And then my house rules are really kind of straight. I hope they're straightforward. To me, they make perfect sense, right? If you're a third party, let me know. But I think they work. And I haven't really advertised it too much on Consim World, which is where I think Adam spends most of his time, the designer. So I don't have any input from him on this yet. I will probably ask soon, say, hey, Adam, I threw this out here. Can you take a look and let me know what you think and do with it what you will, right? I mean, he could look at some of this stuff. He could look at the house rules and say, those aren't, I don't agree with the premise, and they're not going to be in a 3.1 version of the rules if there ever is a 3.1 version of the rules. But this will at least help somebody out, I hope. um, and as I go through this, you can kind of see, this is like cheating. You can kind of see some of the stuff I'm going to talk about here up in my tabs, but don't focus too much there. What's interesting about Korea Fire and Ice, and I did just outside the context of a review, I think what's going to rub people the wrong way, and it's going to be the biggest hurdle to people enjoying that game, is that you don't have mechanized armor forces as distinct counters on the board. They are abstracted into a support level system. That support system sort of makes sense, or it makes sense for the most part. You can certainly get into some weird circumstances that may be kind of hard to believe or understand kind of how that would be the case in terms of what is this game situation really simulating. But I can see why it was pursued, why the designer chose to represent the game that way. But something I'm walking away from the game a little bit with is they really should have just let mechanized armor units be units on the map. They should have just let that. Yeah, the Korean War is one where it is worth having that distinctly called out. Now, the second game in the OSS series, Vietnam Rumor of War, has the same thing. Armor is abstracted into the support level. But for that game, it makes a whole lot more sense. One, because the scale is very different. Instead of, like, in Korea Fire and Ice, each turn is maybe a couple of weeks. Or 1 week. 1 to 4 weeks is a turn. But in Vietnam Rumor of War, each turn is a season and a year. And so the scale's a little bit different, and armor was really used quite a bit differently for the majority of the Vietnam War. So if you were to pick a conflict and say, hey, we're going to abstract out armor a little bit, that one makes a whole lot more sense than the Korean War, in my opinion. and it has a lot to do with the way terrain matters. Terrain definitely matters in that support level system. So you're not going to have armor operating in the mountains. That's just it won't work. You're going to get very little value out of armor support in that terrain. And likewise in Vietnam, you can imagine, well, the terrain's really not that great for armor warfare. So I think it makes more sense for that. But as the OSS system has evolved, it seems like, there was a change to say, okay, we are going to have armor units on the map. And so for those who are audio only, I'm going to the product page for the Doomsday Project Episode 1, The Battle for Germany. This is the third, I guess this would be the third game in the OSS series. It is a hypothetical World War III in Europe kind of situation. So Battle for Germany, you can imagine NATO versus Warsaw Pact in the 80s, basically. And I'm gonna show just a quick snapshot of the counters using the images on the Compass Games website, and what I'm showing is that there are counters that represent armor units included in the counter mix. Now they're showed with a silhouette, not a NATO symbol, but that's how I know. I'm like, okay, that's an armor unit, right? That's a tank. Starting with this game, there are distinct armor counter units on the board. Now, unfortunately, the rules for the Battle for Germany, the rules PDF, I can't find on the Compass Games website. I can't find on Consim World. I do not know how the rules differ in totality for how these are used compared to the Korean War game, Korea Fire and Ice, or Vietnam Rumor of War. I do not know for certain. I know that support levels are still used in this game, but it's like equipment support track or something like that, so it's abstracted differently. But what's interesting is you can still see on here there are counters for those who are watching the video. There are counters that say like M113 support, Leo 1 support, Centurion support. So there is still somehow some markers denoting how much armor support of a given type you have, but there are still distinct counters that seem to represent these armor tank units. And apparently there are still counters in this game that have mechanized NATO symbols. So there's just a whole bunch, like from an outside looking in perspective, there certainly seems to be this implication that in terms of the design, the OSS system has adopted eventually the use of armor units specific counters on the board depending on the game circumstances, and in this version of the system that's there, which is kind of interesting. Like, I think that's a good thing because so many, like I'll say, there's people out there who are going to prefer to be able to push around counters that are tanks. They want to push the tanks around and do the maneuver warfare and all that kind of stuff, for sure. That and if you've got a game that won't have that, or it is portrayed differently, I guess is one way to look at it, that might be a big problem for Korea Fire and Ice. And it does make me wish that maybe, and I'm sure this won't happen, but it'd be really cool if it did happen, that somehow you could retrofit Korea Fire and Ice to use the armor system of Battle for Germany, where there are specific counters, if that's the way it works. And I'm still not 100% sure that is how it works, but if it did work that way, I would love a like quarter sheet of counters that could come in Paper Wars or something magazine, just a couple strips of counters that represent the UN forces and the communist forces armor units, because it's still relatively in small numbers, to include in the game, and then a page or two of rules that govern how to use them retrofitted to the Korean War conflict for Korea Fire and Ice. That'd be really cool. I don't think that we would get that, but I would much prefer if it did, and then that would allow me to talk about Korea Fire and Ice without that gotcha of saying, hey, Korea Fire and Ice is going to have this mechanic where the tanks aren't on the board and they work this way, and it's you got to wrap your head around it a little bit, and that's just one of the weird challenges I've experienced with that game. That is going to be a big topic in the review because folks are going to have to keep that in mind. Now, the way the system is going for Battle for Germany and potentially other systems, it looks like the system has matured enough that um, all the cool bits of that system are able to shine, and some of the weird stuff has maybe been smoothed out to where it's a much more solid game experience. But I don't have the Battle for Germany. It is recent. It just came out within the last couple of months. I don't know that I'm going to get a copy of the game just because of my game budget and kind of where my time limitations are. It's certainly a possibility I would want to try to play it and get it at some point. I don't know. Um, but I think the system is certainly growing into itself, it seems like. But I want more opinions on the Doomsday Project. So if any of you are watching and you've been playing the Battle for Germany, let me know what you think. Because I think it would be interesting to compare it. I would like to play Vietnam Rumor of War so that I can actually properly have a feel for the system besides Korea Fire and Ice, because Korea Fire and Ice obviously is the only one I've played in the series so far. That's limited information. I do own Vietnam Rumor of War. I have read through the rules several times. I think I understand how it's going to work when I play it sometime, but there's still some challenges I think with the rules, and it seems like for people trying to read the Vietnam Rumor of War rules, they have some problems with it. I think what helps me is that the 3.0 rules of Korea Fire and Ice make the rules so much easier to understand that when I read the Vietnam Rumor of War rules, I went, oh, of course, yeah, that works this way. I totally understand I'm speaking its language. I understand what it means. Um, and I'm not encountering the hurdle of coming to it fresh and not understanding what the game is intending to try to portray. So maybe the Vietnam Rumor of War rules are just fine. It's going to be hard for me to know that now because to me it makes sense. Um, Maybe it deserves a revision like Korea Fire and Ice did, where the rules are simply reorganized into a better format like the 3.0 rules exist for Korea Fire and Ice, and it would make a whole lot more sense. I'm not really sure. um, so I don't know. I do want to play Vietnam Rumor of War. It's on my to-do list in the near term. I don't know how soon. I had done a little poll on my YouTube community channel asking what folks' interest were in playing sort of the next thing. The poll results were a lot tighter than I thought might be the case, so there are some folks interested in seeing Vietnam Rumor of War next, but not as much as other stuff. There's a lot of people interested in the Korean War reprint from Compass. There's a lot of people interested in the Deadly Woods, so I'm going to talk a little bit about those games next. I will probably be doing the Deadly Woods next. Like 90% sure it's going to be the Deadly Woods next. So let's talk about those for a little bit. So done with this OSS. We'll keep it in consideration here as we're going. So the Korean War Designer Signature Edition has come out. I did the unboxing video. I got some interesting comments because I was one of the... I don't know how big the problem is, but there were definitely some counter issues experienced by many folks. Now, when I did my unboxing video, I think it was Pete out there who was like, hey, weird that your counters seem fine and all these other people's are messed up. Let me assure you, I don't get any special treatment as far as I'm aware from any game publisher. I'm not a big wig yet, if I ever will be, and I'm not really concerned if I am never a big wig. I have a decent number of subscribers, which is pretty freaking cool, but I don't get any special treatment as far as I know. So I lucked out in that my counters were mostly fine. They were not perfect. There were some alignment issues. When I do game coverage for this game, you guys will see that. But it was not as bad as many others have experienced. Now, my understanding is that the printing up company that Compass used for this, they are no longer working with, but like they had done a big print run of these counters as this game was coming together, and the counter thickness is good. but almost too thick, in fact, for whatever die cut was being used to punch to create the cut in the counter sheet for the counters. So it and you have a misalignment problem. So the one issue is that many counters were rendered unusable by folks because the entire top layer that they used to create the cardboard counter was shifted too far from where the die cut was made, so that you had, like, in some cases, like half a counter is missing, basically. Now, I was really lucky. The worst of it is that I have some B-29s with a sliver of their right wing cut off. I also lose a number, a very small number, inconsequential, from replacement unit counters. But the stars that also denote that number are clearly visible on my counter. So to me, functionally, I don't have any issues with my counters. I would have preferred them been perfectly aligned and great, but they're a little bit off, but not so much that I felt the need to ask for replacement counters. Now, my understanding is Compass is providing, for those who ask, replacement counters. They are thinner, they are more like standard thickness counters, but they're going to punch and clip a whole lot easier, and they're going to look just fine, is my understanding, based on what people have been saying out there on Consim World and other places. So, if you got this game, or you're worried about getting this game, if you have any counter issues, hit up Compass Games. They will figure out a way to get you what you need pretty quickly. I think Ardwolf had some issues, and he got his counters pretty quickly. I'm okay. I'm not going to ask for replacements because I can make do. There's not a big issue at all for me. I lucked out that my issue was minimal. And in the hope that if there's a finite number of replacement counter sheets, it can go to the people who really need it. Now, what I ended up doing with mine is I did, based on suggestions I had seen on Consim World, I got a rotary cutter you would use for fabric, so not a motorized one, but a like pizza cutter. I used that to carefully get the counters out of the counter sheet, because punching them would have been a bad idea. The thickness was so thick and the die cut was so poor that I would not have been able to simply punch the counters out without mangling something. So I used the pizza cutter. I very carefully sort of was able to cut deeper and cut them out of the counter sheet properly. You still have to be careful. Like, I preferred it to an X-Acto knife because I have mangled a counter with an X-Acto knife. You can still mangle your counters with the pizza cutter, but it's not really a pizza cutter. It is a sharper device for cutting fabric. That worked pretty good for me, but I still had to very carefully do each line between the counter sheet and the counters to cut it. I just finished clipping all of those counters as well, so I got them all cut out, and then over the course of like 4 days, doing a little bit at a time, I rounded the corners with my clipper. Now that took a while for a couple of reasons. One, they are so thick that you have to try just a little tiny, almost negligible bit harder to punch the counter or to clip them when you engage the mechanism. And because the nibs were so big, because again the cardboard was so thick, I actually had to go around a counter twice, because the nib would keep it off center into going into the little cut hole to actually trim the counter. And so I would have to do like 2 passes for each counter to make sure that there was an even cut, well placed, basically, so that the counter was sitting flush in the contraption to round the corner. So that took a long time to do. It was kind of a pain in the butt. But the nibs were so bad, I felt the need. I had to clip the game. Now that it's all clipped, the counters look nice. I mean, I'll say that. I mean, I'm glad that my thicker counter sheet turned out to be mostly fine, because the counters do look nice once they're all cleaned up, cut out, and trimmed. But it took some work to get there, manual labor to fix up the counters. But they look nice. It looks good. I'm happy. I'm pretty happy, all things considered, with the situation that I lucked out, and I was able to get the counters cleaned up. So, there's some grief out there for this. I think the grief is solvable. And I'll say that based on my reading of the rules are very clear, well written. Um, I have like one question that I still don't have a full answer to, and just a rules interpretation, but not a big deal, um, really. And yeah, I'm so close to just wanting to play this right off the back of Korea Fire and Ice, but I think I need a palate cleanser before I do. So I will probably cover this game and play through with my cleaned up counters and let you guys see it in more detail. But it might not be for a little while yet. But I do not regret my purchase. I am okay with the production quality for me. But if you're getting this game, have some counter issues, do reach out, try to get some replacements, and you should be in good shape. All things considered, sounds like they're not going to be using that printer anymore. So going forward, hey, all is well in the world. Um, in regards to the Deadly Woods, at this point, I am probably going to play this next. Now, I know there are other folks who are doing some playthrough videos, but apparently there's enough interest from you guys who watch regularly that want me to do this. And I've really made it a point to play every Dark and Deadly series game. So, the Deadly Woods, I am excited to play. I have punched most of the counters. I am clipping the counters just because I want to. And I am most of the way, or I'm a good way through clipping the counters. So I still have some more processing to do of punching the counters and clipping them. But the counters came out of the sheet very easy. The clipping is going very easy. The counters are in just a totally different world from the Korean War counters. So to do them back to back like that is kind of an interesting experience. So Revolution, I think so far. I mean, I need to look a little bit deeper into everything. They did a good job with the counters that were printed and used, and overall, good stuff here. There's some errata I need to go review for this, but I am probably 2/3 the way through getting everything cleaned up and cut out and situated. So once I get the Korea Fire and Ice review video out, I will probably be focused on studying the rules up for this and getting it ready and playing this on camera, doing the playthrough and the whole thing. I do have the Dark Summer coming from GMT, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. So either way, more Dark series, Deadly series, however you want to look at that series, more of that to come for sure in multiple forms. I like the chit pool. I like the relatively easy to understand rule set and game flow that Ted uses in this series. It's enjoyable. I know there's a lot of other operational World War II games to enjoy, like from Mark Simonich and other things, but this fits nicely into the game experience that I want. So I'm looking forward to this. I know you guys are too. And talking about some more current event stuff, I tend to talk about GMT games and Compass games a lot, largely because they are the companies I've purchased the most war games from, and who I've purchased the most war game magazines from, or at least their associated war game magazines. Like C3I isn't necessarily officially GMT related, but it is closely aligned. And Paper Wars is Compass Games' war game magazine, and I've gotten a lot of that stuff. Um, talking quickly to the GMT monthly update. So, plenty of good information in here. Take a look. I think the most pertinent things that I wanted to bring up just for fun here is taking a look at the P500 stuff. So, there's this Robin Hood game coming out, which is kind of an interesting topic. I don't know that this interests me enough to pick up, but certainly something a little bit different. It is based on it's the Irregular Combat series. I'm sorry, Irregular Conflict series, which is taking the coin system, stripping off some of the coin mechanics, keeping others, and just sort of making a different game flow for it. And you can see, I mean, it looks like there's already a lot to look at. They've already got a lot of the components kind of figured out. Definitely an interesting topic. Like, I just think it's a very cool topic to cover. I just don't know. I haven't played the first game in this series, so I really just don't know how well it compares to Coin. But kind of an interesting game. Price point, it's pretty good. 50 if you do the P500, 50 US dollars. Um, so kind of a cool thing to see come up. There's a few other games I'm not as interested in. For those who have Stalingrad 42, you're going to have, up here, you're going to have an expansion, which sounds like it just adds some additional units and scenarios. It may not add more maps. Let's see if I get confirmation of that. Half a counter sheet, setup cards, player aid cards, and then some rulebook stuff, latest living rules and whatnot. So no new maps, but different setups. So I never ended up picking up Stalingrad 42. I've been on the edge for a while, but I just haven't justified the purchase. Ultimately, I can always just play the Dark Valley if I want a lot of East Front stuff. So it's like, it's a tough call. So, I don't know. That's pretty cool. This is the one that I'm really kind of intrigued by. So, the Great Statesman series has had a pretty good run. There's now another game announced, so Triumvir, which is covering Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus subjugate the Roman Republic. So let's see. The first game was Churchill. I really liked Churchill. I still have Churchill. I think it's a fun game. The war gamey elements of it were pretty reduced, but it fit kind of this nice abstracted level of policy driven decisions on how to conduct the end stages of World War II, which was cool. The second game was Pericles, which I absolutely love, and I probably like it the most. Out of the games in the Great Statesman series, because there's still a war game in Pericles. Like, you are worried about troop movement and taking territory, though it is abstracted in a lot of ways. There's still a war, actively being fought in that game, and the Peloponnesian War is a really interesting war. So just a lot of cool stuff comes together for Pericles to make it a really cool game. The third game was Versailles 1919, and I have to admit, I haven't played it. I have it. I haven't played it. I've looked at it. Because of COVID and everything else, I just haven't gotten enough people together to even attempt playing it. So it's hard for me to say anything about Versailles 1919. It's definitely intriguing, but it has a much smaller, like, war-related aspect to it. So it's sort of an unknown quantity, and it looks like Triumvir is probably closer to Versailles 1919 than, say, a Pericles or a Churchill, where there's some resemblance of a war here. And you can imagine, right? I mean, there were wars going on during the time of Pompey, Caesar, and Crassus. You had Caesar operating, depending on what time frame they're really choosing to focus on, right? You have stuff going on in Gaul, you have Crassus's efforts against Persia, and all of that. So, but you can see here, like, they are looking at unrest and Hispania, Gaul, Macedonia, Syria, North Africa. It looks like there's a different, like, your recurring favor with the patrician class, the plebeian class, the military class, within the Roman Republic. But if you look at the way these cards are spaced, they look a lot like the map, or the board rather, for Versailles 1919, where it's really about issues rather than explicit decisions being made about conducting a war. And so for that reason, I'm a little turned off on it, just because I want there to be more of a war aspect to it for some reason. That's just kind of where I'm landing. But the whole topic of Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus is such an interesting one that, like, I can't help but be attracted to the game. And especially because it's 3 players, so 3-player games are always rather interesting to me. I think a lot more needs to come out for this, but I'm kind of hooked into the Great Statesman series. I really respect what it's doing. So even if some of it I'm not 100% sure about, I think I am probably going to end up pre-ordering this one, and getting it, and hopefully getting it to the table. The subject matter is just very cool, and just ultimately the proof is going to be in the pudding, how well it works. Maybe I'll play Versailles 1919 and decide I really don't like that version of the system as much as Churchill and Pericles, and maybe I canceled or something. But this is intriguing enough that I definitely want to give it a shot. I mean, I've really not been disappointed by a Mark Herman design, so maybe I'll just fanboy it that way and get it anyway. I don't know. So something to consider there. There's other stuff, reprints of various games. One of the things that I wanted to call out, I'm going to skip through a lot of this stuff here. All good information. Here's the stuff to come from GMT. So Dark Summer, Normandy, 1944. I mentioned this was going to be coming, another game in the Dark series. It says shipping now, so I don't think I've gotten a shipping email or confirmation, but I'm pretty sure I probably got charged for it. I have to go look at my records. I can't remember, but I'm expecting to get this probably in the pretty near term. So I like the box art and everything. That's all. It looks spiffy. So yeah, this will be coming. This is going to be pretty similar, I think, in scale to the Deadly Woods. So it could be by the time I'm done, well, maybe even before I get started with the Deadly Woods, I'll get my copy of the Dark Summer and we'll do an unboxing. But obviously, we'll get this one to the table and we'll get this one covered. Okay, shipping May 19th. So they just started shipping this one. Okay. We'll probably get this played and on the table before too long. I don't mind going back to back on Chit Pool if that's what we end up doing. Though there's plenty of games I need to be playing. And then in looking at the production outlook, so the stuff that's going to be coming. For me, I don't have a lot of this stuff pre-ordered. I have MBT and I have Panzer games, but I've never played them because I kind of need an opponent for it, and I've just never gotten around to getting an opponent. So not much to say about these. I've thought about selling my copies just because I haven't played them, but good to know that the reprints are coming. I can kind of hurts my chances of selling my existing copies, I guess, but not a big deal. There was some stuff on here I wanted to call out. So you can see they have. I like the way GMT structures this to say stuff shipping now, stuff shipping soon, stuff that's at the printer, so it's kind of on its way. And then there's stuff that is all tentatively coming. So Conquest and Consequence, which is Triumph and Tragedy for the Pacific Theater, I am looking forward to. It's probably the only block kind of game I really actually like, so I'm interested in trying that. Plenty of other games coming out that are worth a look. I can't talk about all of them. What I will say is that the games that I'm most interested in are still yet pretty far away. So this area of anticipated shipping in 6 to 10 months. 6 to 10 months is a pretty wide band, so you don't really know. And it could be any games in this category could jump ahead of the others, even if they've not been on the list long enough. Some have been, in like the 10 to 12 month category, I think they've had. But I'm really interested the most in Pacific War and Vietnam. And this really reflects the sort of, recent batch of old games being reprinted as deluxe versions or a little bit of freshening up for the new age, whether it be folks that just want new copies of a game they like, or for folks like me who maybe never got a chance to play them. It still feels like these guys are far, far away. Pacific War was announced much longer ago. It's got 2,300 pre-orders. I haven't seen a huge amount of news on this in a while. I suspect it's just making steady progress. But really looking forward to this one. So I'm hoping it leaves this anticipated shipping 6 to 10 months soon, and we start seeing it start floating up, because I'm really looking forward to trying this one out. I actually do own a copy of the original, but at this point I'm not willing to take that plunge with the '80s components. It's just a harder thing for me to prioritize amongst all the other game stuff I'm looking at. So we got that, and then of course the Vietnam reprint, which is now almost at 900 pre-orders. They've got some sample map stuff out there. This looks to be coming along nicely, being worked on by folks who really, really like the game, so they kind of know the game very well. So, really looking forward to those two games. Can't wait to get on. It'll be really interesting to bust those guys open and see what we got. And there's plenty of other cool stuff coming. Even further out, but it's hard to talk about these since they're pretty far away. So that's kind of it for the new GMT stuff that I'm really interested in. They've always got a lot of interesting stuff cooking, especially with the more oddball designs covering oddball topics that don't get as much coverage. I mean, a Robin Hood game, right? I mean, who would have predicted that? Brings us over to Compass Games. So they recently had a pre-order stream that I did not catch, but they got some stuff added on here. So more OSS stuff. I think that might have come out before the stream. I can't quite remember. We knew this was coming anyway. So extending the Battle for Germany to Battle for the Balkans. One game that I want to call out specific is No Peace Without Honor. So this is another game in the No Peace Without Spain system. This time covering a set of wars running from 1667 to 1684. And there's some pictures of components already, so apparently this is kind of well on its way. Honestly, the map looks like it is just the same map from the 9 Years' War or War of the Grand Alliance, whichever one that was in the same system, where it uses almost the same map across all these games. The one interesting thing is that they are intending this to be part of a grander campaign, if you want to play it that way, where you can play this game, then you can play, I want to say it's, 9 Years' War, and then Peace Without Spain. 9 Years' War comes next, and then No Peace Without Spain. You can already, if you have 9 Years' War and No Peace Without Spain, play those two together in a grand campaign, and this is going to further extend it. And while Pragmatic War uses the same system, it does not connect to the others because it is portraying, a slight different jump in time, like 20 years. But overall, I do like this system. I mean, it's a card-driven game. It is a simpler card-driven game system. Not as much focus on events, though there are some event cards that are involved in the game. I just really like the idea of a grand campaign situation. Now, it's not, there's certain circumstances where it's kind of janky because you're basically like whoever wins this game will get certain benefits into the next one, and how do you account for an overwhelming victory? I think they figured out a decent way to make it all work together. So I am interested in picking this up. I am interested in playing this. I haven't pre-ordered yet, but I would like to. I'll probably do it soon. I don't really see any gotchas here. If you like the system, if you like the gameplay of it, it's probably going to be very similar to what you already like, and then it's just a matter of playing it up. Different leaders, a lot of the same kind of units and components. I think the one thing will be, depending on how much overlap there is in terms of components, you could possibly use a lot of these if the components are improved over like the older No Peace Without Spain. Maybe you could use some of these components no matter which campaign you're currently playing as an upgrade. My copy of No Peace Without Spain is the first printing. I don't know if the second printing of the original game in the system is a lot better, but I don't know. I'm looking forward to this one. Kind of neat. I like having games in this period because there's just not a huge amount of them, and they can cover these oddball wars a little bit. If you like Louis XIV or whatever, it's kind of an interesting set of games for that. If you're interested in his history, the Sun King, the whole mythology around that kind of stuff, you can have fun with that. Um, yeah, so Compass Games announced other stuff. I'm not as interested in some of these other ones. I mean, there's always the possibility. For some reason, I've purchased a lot of Compass games recently. Again, no secret relationship there. They've been publishing a lot of games that I've been interested in, that I've wanted to play. So I've been picking them up as I can, and yeah, they're doing good. It really, between GMT and Compass, I mean, they're providing a lot of the games that I could possibly want to play, and smaller shops are doing good too. Just these guys are always in my news feed, which is a really good segue into the last topic I have for this monitor side chat. I was going to do a dedicated video for this as well, but just didn't really find the time for it. So I'll stick it in here, as this video is now getting very long. There is the Consim World social media website, and I thought about doing a video on this when it first came out, and I just never got around to it. So this is located on the Consim World webpage. If you go to their top menu, you can go to Community. You can get signed up. The interface, as you can tell probably but just by looking at this, is very Facebook-esque. Very similar to Facebook. It's got this whole reputation system, which is kind of like tracking who gets the most likes, which is kind of weird, but okay. It is meant to be a social media space for Consim World, to eventually replace, I think, the old forum. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe they're going to keep the forum around, and I don't know. I'm not sure 100% sure of the future here. But when you get signed up, you can join different groups. You can see I've signed up for some groups. I'm on the GMT group, several hundred members. Multiband Publishing, because I do like some of the multiband publishing stuff that I have. Compass Games, obviously, C3I, Eastern Front Games, Revolution Games, different things. And by golly, guys, I have a group on here. Steve's Consim World Corner is basically the process. We have 6 members. So thank you for whoever's joined. Here we go. Hey guys. Well, welcome to the party. The thing about it is, I don't really know what I want to do with this space. I have posted like one thing on here, which is something of an AAR that I published to some Facebook groups that I'm a member of. A really basic one that I had for playing When Eagles Fight from GMT. The thing is, I had done this, and I don't know. It was something that made sense to share. That's really the only thing I have on here. Like, I really don't know how I want to use this space. And I say that because I clearly do the YouTube videos, and that's great. There's a community section of my YouTube page where you can see additional posts from me. Things like the polls that I ask sometimes. So here, it's like, well, what do I want to put in this space? Obviously, I've not even posted enough to get many people to join, for those who even know about this space. But I could post AAR stuff, right? Anything that I do that isn't really video appropriate, I guess, like stuff that just, like, the format doesn't work for a video, or if I'm playing a game with friends and I'm not recording that because it's a different, I'm not there with a camera, I'm just playing games with people. This was a game with my wife that she and I played. We played When Eagles Fight. If I'm willing to write a little session report and take some pictures, I could post it to this space. I don't think it makes sense to post every video that I make on here. Now, different folks use this differently, I guess. I haven't been in here in a while, to be honest. I haven't logged in in several weeks. So I'm sure there's some groups that I would want to join. Um, I have just not figured out. I don't know. Like I said, I'm trying to figure out what's the right way to use this, right? Like, how valuable is this um, to you guys who have mentioned to me before wanting to have some kind of blog space or website to support the channel. Um, this could be the way to do it here instead, where there's already a platform. I just don't know how I would use it yet, right? It takes as much effort as it takes to do videos. It makes sense to use this space differently than just the YouTube channel. But what I don't want to do is come in here and just post a link to my latest video, right? Like, if you like my channel, you're probably just checking out my channel on some cadence, or if you're subscribed, you're getting some level of notification that I've posted a new video, and you see that in your YouTube feed. Does it actually help to post a link to a video here if you're even using this social media platform? And I know there are guys out there who have their channels, and when they make a new video, they post it to every Facebook group that they're like, and some of this is from like the big channels, you know, the guys who have a lot of subscribers. They're on point with their social media game. They're getting a lot of views. They've maybe monetized their channels. I have not done that. I don't know if I ever will. It's not that big of a deal to me. But those folks are like, they're posting their links to every Facebook group that they're a member of. I get the same notification about the same video multiple times because they're posting to these different groups, whether it's the Wargamer Facebook group or various special interest, Wargamer groups. Where they're posting the same link to everything. So to me, it's like, well, if I just post a link here, does that actually help anybody? Should it really be stuff like this that is specifically unique content that you guys might like? I don't know. I really don't. I'm like at a loss. I don't go on enough social media that I'm checking all the feeds all the time, where I'm going to post everything here all the time, or that I'm going to be super duper active here. I've not been very active on here. Sometimes between Board Game Geek, Facebook, Consim World forums, and everything else, it's hard to sustain everything. So I'm going to ask you guys what you think. Does this make sense? Is there value here? Is this a platform that you want to use? Does it make sense for me to post stuff there? Let me know, because I have not leveraged it as much as I could be. I need to find the niche reason for using it, and it has not occurred to me what that really is. Besides the space I already have, where I'm posting, and I'm obviously posting the videos somewhere. They're going to YouTube, and I'm linking them at Board Game Geek to the relevant game pages for the things that make sense, like unboxing videos, like reviews. Not always playthrough videos, because I don't want to swamp the video section with every single playthrough video of mine. But I don't know. I really am. I'm at a loss. I'm interested in hearing your guys' feedback for this. If you somehow watched this entire hour-long video, good job. I appreciate that you stuck with the whole thing, and hopefully you're getting a lot of work done doing whatever it is you might otherwise be doing. Clipping counters, mowing the lawn, doing the dishes, working on your car, whatever it is that has enabled you to stick through this, or if you're just watching the whole way through. Thank you for that. Yes, very interested in all your thoughts. Any thoughts on all the topics that I talked about here? Let me know. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Sorry this can't be an interactive stream, because it was like, hey, short notice, I've got some time to record, let's do it, rather than a planned thing where you guys know the place and time to be for a stream. So sorry about that, but I am interested in hearing. I will respond to your comments as best I can. Let me know what you're thinking, and we'll go from there, guys. Looking forward to the Korea Fire and Ice review video to come, and Deadly Woods probably shortly thereafter. Thanks for watching. If you made it the whole way through, I appreciate it. If you like the video, hit like. If for some reason you're watching this and you're not subscribed and you want to see more stuff, you should hit subscribe, and then you'll know when there's more stuff coming. Or maybe join the Consim World group, I guess, and we'll see what comes of that. I don't know. All right, guys, I'm gonna head off. Thanks for watching again, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Keep on gaming.